Coming now is Alex Newman, libertysentinel.org, libertysentinel.org. Alex, welcome to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
I mean, great to be with you, Brandon.
All right. I want to talk to you about many issues here. The MAGA base is really frustrated. They're hearing that this is the greatest economy ever, inflation's under control, yet they know that's not the case when they go to the grocery store. They're being told tariffs are going to bring in so much money, we're going to be able to do away with the federal income tax. That's not being talked about anymore that I've heard lately. And yet we're now being told $2,000 checks are going to be going out. We are dealing with Maduro. They had to rewrite the charges against him, take things out that weren't even accurate. Yet we have a history with our own government of drug running. We dealt with that in our segment tonight with David Pine. The whole movie was made about it, called American Made, with Tom Cruise, about Barry Seal running drugs. Our own CIA, 60 Minutes, did a piece on running cocaine. I mean, we're so busy policing everybody else and dealing with their corruption, we're not dealing with any of ours. We have governors like Newsom, apparently, in his state. We have Minnesota with Walz. We have billions and billions, probably now trillions lost in fraud. The Pentagon can't pass, the last 18 audits, yet you try that with the IRS. The American people are fed up with our corrupt government. Nothing is being improved. No one's indicted. No one's being arrested, but we're arresting Maduro. Not that I'm defending him or opposed to it. If it means stopping Iran from continuing to set up missiles in Venezuela and other things. But at some point, we're running out of time. And we don't even have the voter ID things dealt with to make sure that we can have a free and fair election coming up in the midterms. I know that's a lot, but I'm going off of what I'm seeing on social media, the emails we're getting and seeing, but a lot of it comes from the frustration I'm seeing on social media with the MAGA base. Can you speak to any of this?
Well, thank you again, Brandon. And there's no doubt that a lot of Trump's base is getting frustrated with the situation. And I think in some ways they're right to be frustrated. I mean, we're out arresting foreign criminals like Maduro, and I think I've got a very nuanced view on what happened there. But meanwhile, the real criminals who we've been promised are going to be facing justice and accountability are still running around free. They're still enjoying their mansions and their giant retirements after all the crimes they perpetrated against the American people, after the betrayal of our country and our Constitution, after the efforts to overthrow our system of government. And so I understand the frustration, and the economy is the same issue. Now, there are good things happening, and I think what happened in Venezuela, while I think there are very valid constitutional questions, I think what is happening in Latin America is very important. It's needed to be addressed for a long time. You and I have talked about it before, Brandon. I grew up in Latin America, of course. I spent almost all my childhood in Latin America, and I've been following for over 15 years in the New American Magazine and other publications the communist takeover of that region, backed by the Kremlin, backed by the CCP. Of course, Iran and Hamas and Hezbollah are all involved. And, of course, the deep state in the United States has been actively involved in this. I mean, if you look at the Council on Foreign Relations, what I call deep state headquarters, their main point person for Latin America for years, Julia Swig, was a Castro apologist, somebody who was openly helping the leftist, communist, jihadist axis take over the entire hemisphere. You have Barack Obama and Joe Biden and George Soros handing whole countries over to these communist terrorists on a silver platter, Colombia being just one of many examples. And so, this is something that has needed to be dealt with for a long time. Whether it was dealt with in the best way, I'm not qualified to say. I'm glad I don't have to make those decisions. But, the left is trying to do everything possible to bring down the United States, the left in alliance with the Islamists and others. And they're finding great success. I don't envy Donald Trump's position. He basically has taken over a country that was already on the verge of destruction. I've heard the analogy used, it's like trying to turn the Titanic around on a dime after you've already hit the iceberg. I mean, that's essentially the situation that I think he finds himself in right now. And I don't envy that situation. But I do get a very real sense that Trump is being set up for a catastrophe. I think the globalist evildoers recognize that he is not on board with a lot of their agenda in terms of selling out the American people, in terms of building a new world order, in terms of destroying our economy. And I think they're going to try to crash everything down on his head and blame it on him. And it will not be justified, in my opinion. You know, he's not the reason that these things happened, but he will be blamed for them. So he's got a very difficult tightrope to walk here. He's got to find a way to explain and articulate this to the American people. He's got to take aim at the key players and the key institutions. He's done something, at least, on the education front in terms of at least exposing the indoctrination of our children and trying to take some basic steps to at least rein it in a little bit. But he's also going to have to address the money situation, right? The reason the inflation is out of control, the reason our economy is collapsing, the reason Americans are struggling to make ends meet is because we have a fraudulent monetary system. It's basically a criminal syndicate masquerading as a federal agency, a banking cartel that creates money out of nothing, loans it out into the economy, and then charges us interest that they never created. It's the ultimate form of usury. And of course, they've used this to basically loot the American people, to destroy the American middle class. And you know, Trump's base, I think, they're right to be frustrated, but they need to understand that this is a problem that was not caused by Donald Trump. Trump understands a lot of this, and so I don't understand why he hasn't come out and tried to explain to the American people clearly the problems with this system. But he's got a lot of work ahead of him. So,
wow, great analysis. You talk about the desire to create chaos in the country. Let's go to Minneapolis. You probably have seen the footage. We can bring it back up if you want, Logan. The ICE agent having to shoot what I think now is a 37-year-old lady. Apparently he thought he had to shoot her. Apparently he felt his life was at risk. It looked like from one angle the car did hit him, and he had to shoot this lady. And now we're seeing protests in the street. The governor of Minnesota has apparently called for people to get into the streets, not only in Minneapolis, but in Chicago and other cities. There's the footage of the shooting. And we have another angle, I think, from KSTP that, you know, Logan can play that looks like it shows, you know, the ICE agent being hit. But there is the shot, and this woman is now dead. I think he's got another angle. And let's see. Is this the... There's the other angle. All right. All right. Now we've got the governor of Minnesota. Listen to him. Listen to this, Alex. Tim Walz, who's under investigation, apparently.
Well, I said this yesterday. We've never been at war with our federal government. I think in this case that the National Guard is their main mission. They have a dual mission.
We've never been at war with the federal government. So he just declared basically there's a civil war. He just said it. Alex?
Yep. And, you know, Brandon, you and I have been talking about this for years. We have been warning for years that there are powerful forces that want to see a civil war in this country. And it's interesting that this is happening now. Back to Venezuela, you know, to go back now 50 years, I want people to remember the Weather Underground.
Yes.
The Weather Underground, terrorist organization in the United States, was working very closely with Cuban intelligence, with the DGI, the Director General of Intelligence for the mass murdering Cuban dictatorship. And they were bombing targets in America. They bombed the Pentagon. They bombed the Capitol. They bombed the State Department. They murdered police officers, and then they bombed the funerals of those police officers so they could murder more people. They robbed money trucks to facilitate their terrorism. And we know, thanks to the efforts of FBI operative Larry Grathwohl, what their plan was. They wanted to kick off a revolution in the United States that would cause chaos. They were planning to invite hostile foreign governments into the United States to occupy different parts of the country. The Soviets would get a part, the Vietnamese would get a part, the North Koreans would get a part, the Cubans would get a part, et cetera. And they were going to build, Larry Grathwall said, and he said he heard them talking about this, a network of concentration camps to re-educate Americans. And then they were planning to exterminate the 25 million Americans who could not be re-educated. And people think about that and they think it's ancient history. They don't realize that the founder of that terrorist movement, Bill Ayers, who was let off on a technicality, did not disappear. And he did not get hung or thrown in jail for life as he should have been. Instead, he became a professor of education. And then he launched the political career of a guy that nobody had ever heard of, a community organizer named Barack Obama. And then Barack Obama came to power and started building up these communist regimes across Latin America that have been working to destroy us all along. So it all comes full circle. And I think what we're witnessing right now in Minnesota and across the country, not just with the protests against ICE, but all of it, is an effort to kick off a civil war in this country. And I think American conservatives have to be very careful not to fall for the trap.
100%.
I hear more and more conservatives talking about how, well, we have all the guns and all the rest of it. No, that's not how this works. We're being led into a trap, and we have to do everything we can to make sure our country does not fall into a full-blown civil war.
100% agree with that. Here's some video footage. Apparently, the left is chasing away.
Okay, it looks like they are throwing snowballs as the officers are leaving. So again, I believe it was a state patrol, and we did see some MPD officers who were leaving that scene. Hennepin County telling us that their sheriff's deputies have not been on that scene, but it looks like as officers are leaving the scene, just having some protesters or bystanders, agitators throwing some snowballs at them as they leave. We saw this earlier.
We did. Well. Yep, we saw this exact thing earlier, and this was targeted toward ICE agents at that particular time. But now, as you mentioned, this is MPD, BCA was on scene, the sheriff's department as well. And as this street is opening up here, you can see a lot of these protesters, these people in the community responding to this. And now we're having an aerial view here of what we have been seeing, what we did see earlier, and now it's once again you can see them throwing some of those snowballs at those vehicles.
This kind of starts to look like 2020. Remember when they were chasing the police out of parts of Minneapolis and burned down their precinct? I hope we're not going to see that tonight, although I do have footage that's coming in. This is another one out of the Twin Cities where I think they stormed the downtown Minneapolis federal courthouse. Here we go. Out now! And so it looks like they were able to lock it and get them out and stop that. Stop ICE now is the chant there. But they are apparently going out into the streets of the Twin Cities tonight. I'll bring up more of that footage here as I get a response from Alex. But Minnesota, you and I lived there for several years. You've been there a lot. 20, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, we wouldn't have really thought that would be the launch of such massive civil unrest in the country, being Minneapolis, George Floyd, and now this. We kind of expected this somewhere else, but the loons took over, pardon the pun, because that's their state bird, the Minnesota loon. But the loons took over the state, and they've made it basically a place where this is invited and encouraged. I mean, I don't think I can play some of the clips today from the mayor of Minneapolis. Can I, Logan? Wasn't he cursing too much? I don't think I can play some of those clips. Respond to that. Maybe you can find one that's cleaned up, Logan. But respond to that, Alex.
Well, let's not forget, too, again, it all comes full circle. Right? The Black Lives Matter movement obviously was instrumental in the chaos that enveloped Minneapolis. Well, one of the co-founders of the Black Lives Matter movement, Opal Tometi, was in Caracas posing with the murderous dictator, Nicolas Maduro, and posting a picture on Twitter saying, oh, it's so nice to be in a country with intelligent political discourse. So we see, again, the same thing, domestic subversives, domestic terrorist movements working with hostile foreign regimes against the interests of our country. The other major group that was involved in stirring up the big unrest that we saw some years ago in Minneapolis, the Sunshine Movement, this is completely funded by the Rockefeller dynasty and a bunch of other subversive mega foundations. Why would the Rockefeller syndicate be financing left-wing extremists to kick off a revolution in cities like Minneapolis? Well, for the same reason that David Rockefeller was so friendly with Fidel Castro. It all comes full circle. I mentioned the Council on Foreign Relations and their Latin America chief, Julius Swig, helping the communists throughout Latin America. They are using a pincer movement, right, where you've got the pressure from below with the communist radicals in the street, the Black Lives Matter, the subversives burning down cities and attacking cops and shooting at ICE agents and so on. And then you've got the pressure from above, which is the political class, the governor there, the mayor there, et cetera. And the population, confused and desperate, doesn't know what to do, and they get trapped in this vice grip. It's very, very dangerous.
Indeed it is. And, of course, we have to remember Gus Hall, the communist presidential candidate, was from Minnesota.
That's right. Yep.
So I talked with David Pine earlier. He thinks the Democrats are going to win big time in the midterms based on a lot of things we've been talking about tonight, and that President Trump has really gotten off track, off message, and that they're going to impeach him again for the third time. And he may actually be removed from office this time. Some Republicans may join in on that vote and actually remove him from office. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a very real possibility if Trump doesn't succeed in getting this stuff under control right now. Now, not a lot of people are talking about this, but I believe one of the big reasons that Trump decided to risk so much on this capture of Maduro is that he knows that Maduro and his criminal syndicate masquerading as a government were deeply involved with, of course, the communist Cubans in the creation of tools to steal elections around the world. I've talked to multiple sources who have confirmed that the Venezuelan regime was involved in election fraud operations, including here in the United States, and that Trump not only knows about it, but is concerned about it. So hopefully exposing some of the election fraud will help in the lead up to the midterms. But I share those concerns, and I think there's a very real chance that Democrats find a way to take back the House, and there's no doubt in my mind that a lot of Republicans would vote to impeach Trump, especially if the situation continues to deteriorate.
And I would not doubt that his, quote, friend Lindsey Graham, who I don't think is his friend.
No.
And Lindsey Graham has had some horrible things to say about the president after he lost the election, quote, lost the election. And yet he brings him into his inner circle and is seen running around golfing with him, which, again, is really bad for the encouragement of the base. But I think Lindsey Graham will vote to impeach him in the Senate. What do you say? Well, impeach is in the House, convict is in the Senate. I think Lindsey Graham would vote to convict him if I had to guess today. Do you?
Yep. Yeah, I don't think Lindsey Graham is a friend to Donald Trump or the United States, certainly not to our Constitution, certainly not to our military. The guy never saw a foreign war that he didn't want to send your kids to go die in. And frankly, Lindsey Graham, I think, is one of the worst when it comes to Republicans. His voting record is atrocious. I encourage people to look it up on the Freedom Index. At the New American, we give a report card for every member of Congress, and Lindsey Graham is consistently at the bottom of the barrel. I wonder why he was on Air Force One with Donald Trump. And I was very saddened to see Trump endorse him in his bid for re-election. There's a good candidate running against him. And, it just makes you wonder how Trump could continue to make mistakes like these. It's, right now Lindsey Graham's all giddy because of the thing in Venezuela, and he's thinking maybe we'll have an opportunity to do some more regime change things in Iran or somewhere else. But, Lindsey Graham is in it for Lindsey Graham and his globalist masters, not to make America great again, certainly not to put America first.
Coach Tommy Tuberville, who is also a U.S. Senator from Alabama running for governor, we had the chance to interview him on Capitol Hill live in person in May. He's now putting out that Tim Walz is directly responsible for up to $9 billion in fraud. He can't just run into the sunset. He needs to be thrown in prison. You want to take a scale of 1 to 10. 10, he goes to prison. 1, he does not. What do you bet? What do you bet on that one? I'm thinking he doesn't go to prison.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see him arrested. At this point, it's very obvious that he was involved in these criminal activities. The question is, will the very, very, very corrupt judiciary allow something like that? And I think the answer, unfortunately, is no. In fact, I think there's real questions about whether this prosecution of Maduro is going to go anywhere. I mean, we saw what they did with Comey. We saw what they did with Letitia James. I suspect the federal judiciary will do everything possible to throw cold water on all of this so that things can get back to normal once Trump is gone.
And what do you think the United Nations is going to say about all this?
Well, we know the United Nations is very mad. They are saying that Trump is violating international law and that we need to respect the rules-based world order and the UN Charter. So, frankly, when you're making the UN mad, you got to be doing something right. But I was very glad to hear our Secretary of State and our National Security Advisor, Marco Rubio, say, I don't care what the UN says. So we need much more of that. We shouldn't even be in that wicked institution.
Absolutely. All right. Any other things that you want to bring up real quick here that well, I got a tweet coming out here. Let's get this. Protesters are openly calling for the destruction of ICE, the U.S. military-industrial complex, prisons, and what they claim are fraudulent insurance corporations, saying they intend to take power back for the people while voicing support for Palestinians in Gaza, January 7th, tonight. This is all kind of fitting right in with the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. Remember that movie we talked about?
Yep, predictive programming. And there was a new documentary. I've been talking to people all day about it today. A new documentary just dropped 8 or 9 days ago. It's a masterful piece of propaganda. They'll show a clip of some KKK leader saying, like, for God and country. And then they put up General Flynn where he says, for God and country. And then they show a dead body for emotional effect, some Nazi killed. And they're trying to make people think that it's all one. They are preparing this narrative. They've been preparing it for years. I did an episode of my show Behind the Deep State 3 years ago now where I warned that they were conditioning Americans not just to accept a civil war, but to participate in one. And I think we're getting closer to that by the moment. So we've really got to be on our guard, folks. Your neighbor is not the enemy. The guy who watches too much CNN and has been deceived is not the enemy. The enemy is Satan and his minions and the people who are trying to destroy family and church and liberty and all that is good.
Indeed. Here's his website. Take a look at that. Liberty Sentinel. You can see all the articles he has over there. LibertySentinel.org. LibertySentinel.org. He also writes for the New American Magazine, and we carry his broadcast here on the weekends as well. LibertySentinel.org. Alex Newman checking in tonight. Alex, as always, thank you, my friend.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, Brandon. God bless you.
You too, my friend. Alex Newman checking in, guys, and we'll be right back after this short break.